The new Premier League season kicks off this weekend with just 8 matches as Man United and Man City are given an extended break. Coming up, the weekend preview, an FPL chat, and predictions as well. We start though at Craven Cottage where Fulham take on Arsenal. Let's take a look at Fulham now, Bob Holmes. Scotty Parker has been very frugal this time round. Well, Fulham have anyway. They've not splashed 100 million. They've more or less got the core squad. I guess they're going to be relying on the likes of Mitrovic and Niskins Cabano. What a name, Niskins Cabano. to pull the strings and do the business for them.
They've learned a painful lesson. That 100 million was not only squandered, but they actually went straight down again. And Scott Parker took over a club that was in shambles in early 2019. And he's done a fantastic job without spending very much money.
Yep.
He's brought 1 or 2 former players back and that sort of thing. But he's just sorted them out. No one really knew what he was going to be like as a coach. He was a guy you thought that might make it. He was an intelligent footballer, very determined, 100% every game sort of guy. So you thought there might be a manager in him, but you probably didn't expect him to be as successful as this so early on in his career. He's absolutely done wonders there, and it just shows what a dog's breakfast the owners made of it to begin with when they took over. I mean, they've been there nearly 10 years now, and they made all the classic mistakes that owners make. They could have called us and we could have saved them 100 million. They've been relegated twice and got promoted back up again, fortunately. But really, it's taken someone like Parker to sort them out. Now, they're going to struggle. They haven't got a lot of quality. When you look at those names, the big names there are probably Anthony Knockaert, who never quite convinced in the Premier League. He's great in the Championship. He helped Leicester to promotion. That's how long he's been around. He's been at Brighton, but never totally convinced at the top level. They've got Tom Kearney, who's a pretty useful player. They bought him from Blackburn some time ago. I think he's a Premier League player. Yeah. And Mitrovic, of course, is the star. But they're going to depend heavily on Mitrovic's goals. And they've got a chance because they do have a natural goal scorer. And a lot of these teams that go down, they struggle for goals. Like we saw Norwich with Pukki last season. I mean, he started off with a bang, but faded, hardly scored a goal after Christmas. And they just couldn't score to save their lives. They went down. Whereas you've got a guy like Mitrovic who can nick the odd goal, get the odd point here and there. You've got a fighting chance. But they're going to struggle. I think it's going to be a big test for Scott Parker. He's lucky he's got a new contract. He's got a 3-year contract. He deserves it. And he may need it to keep his job because I think they are the favourites to go back down.
Yeah, well, they need good home form. I think they won 10 of their last 13 at home for them, so they need to replicate that. Let's take a look at the Arsenal now, Craig. In midst of a Mikel Arteta revolution right now, he's already brought in Willian and William Saliba, who was actually signed a season ago, loaned back to France. But they're 2 new players. Of course, they've got a few injury problems as well going into this game. How do you see the Gunners faring this season?
I think they'll do pretty well, actually. They had a really good back end to the season in the end. Obviously, winning the cup and a good start to the season. Let's not forget, beating Liverpool on penalties. I like what Arteta's done. I've said it in previous shows. There was a lot of fixing that needed when he came in, and I think when Unai Emery took over from Wenger, he didn't fix those problems. I mean, we're talking about those areas which we keep highlighting season in, season out with Arsenal, which is defensively and that defensive midfield situation that he has. What Arteta has done is he's come in, changed the style of play completely. But what he's done in this transfer window, his first summer transfer window, is he's gone out and he's rectified that. Now, you can argue he's got too many centre backs on his books, but I believe he's going to go with 3 at the back this season. He'll need a lot of them with injuries, suspensions, and things like that. And I think he's done a great job because you look at someone like Saliba. Yes, they signed him last season. Let him out on loan. He did really well in the French league, and now he's come back. I think it'll take a while before he gets given that trust to play in the Premier week out. But then he's got experienced heads next to him. I think Socrates is probably going to be on his way out. I think he's probably going to go Holding maybe as well. But they've got a good core there. Let's not forget Pablo Mari, who they signed. He's into his second season now. Cedric Suarez on the right, seasoned Premier League campaigner, good backup or even first choice in that position. Ainsley Maitland-Niles, he's still there. He was linked with a transfer away. Shield got a call up to the England squad, and I think for me the most important signing that they've made is getting Dani Ceballos back from Real Madrid. In that
back on another season's loan.
Yeah, because if they didn't get him, I think that was an area where they still needed a lot of work on. I know Maitland-Niles can play there if Tierney's going to be on the left and things like that, but Ceballos has a bit of quality about him, and when I say quality, he's 23, 24, but he's got that, how do you say that, Spanish flair. He's good enough to play in that national team for me. And you don't sign for Real Madrid by being an awful player.
Absolutely.
So I think, I think the Aubameyang contract's done. Attacking wise, they look fantastic. Nketiah, Lacazette's still there. Pepe, Saka. Good squad for Arsenal, and I think they're under really good management. So I expect them to do pretty well this season.
I read a piece that said Mesut Ozil saying he's ready for the new season. I chuckled to myself.
I hope his ass is all right.
West Ham versus Newcastle is a late Saturday game at 3 a.m. Sunday kickoff. I want to focus on Newcastle here, Keish, because they've had a failed takeover bid, but Steve Bruce has identified English signings, experienced English players as the way forward. They've gone and they've made some waves in the transfer market, don't you know?
Yeah, they definitely have. And they're finally solving a very big problem, which is, the goals up front. Because last year, one of the biggest problems with them was just getting that goals on a consistent basis. And to be fair to them, in pre-season before last year, they actually went out and got in a striker who came in with the pedigree of having scored goals on a consistent basis in the Bundesliga, which is Joelinton. And everyone expected a lot from him. I remember, I think earlier in the season, on match day 1, the amount of people that had him on their fantasy Premier League team, because you looked at his stats in the Bundesliga and you thought to yourself, here we go. This is a chance for a Brazilian striker to make his name in the Premier League. But it really, really, really didn't go well for him. I think he scored 2 league goals, Joelinton, last year, and now they've brought in Callum Wilson, who is half the price that they paid for Joelinton, and I guarantee you, Callum Wilson will score a lot more than just 2 league goals.
Well,
this season.
This is it. I mean, Bob, not only that, they've got Ryan Fraser in from Bournemouth on a free. Jamal Lewis has come from Norwich, the fullback. Jeff Hendrick has joined from Burnley on a free. These are some decent players who know all about the Premier League, aren't they?
Yeah. Surprisingly, Newcastle paying more than what Liverpool were prepared to pay for Lewis. A few million more, actually. Perhaps Liverpool got cold feet for some other reason. But you wonder,
would it be the first time this transfer went?
It wouldn't, would it? They seem to be suffering from chilblains, I think, Liverpool. Yeah, interesting. Mike Ashley, the much maligned Mike Ashley, is actually coughing up a bit of money. Whether it's going to be enough is open to question. I think it will be. I don't see them. I mean, they were more or less mid-table last year, and they're strengthened, so they should be okay. But they're not going to be contenders for anything. I don't see these guys. They're solid performers, but I don't see them taking Newcastle into Europe or anything like that. But this is the best Steve Bruce can do with a limited budget that he has.
It's the best pre-season they've had for years.
It's slightly more than we expected from Mike Ashley, anyway.
Well, can I just say? I mean, he's not. We give him a lot of credit for splashing the cash. I mean, they're all cut price deals. Let's not. I mean, he's gone to the championship, to the relegated side.
Yeah. So he loves a bargain.
He's got them on a bargain, hasn't he? Ryan Fraser on a free, Callum Wilson, for 20 million. I mean, arguably he's a lot more.
The kind of bargain you'd find. The kind of bargain you'd find at Sports Direct.
Exactly. The one criticism I have of Newcastle so far is that they haven't gone out and got a centre back, which I think they really need. I know they were linked with Rob Holding. I know they've been linked with Chris Smalling, but I think before the transfer deadline, they do need a centre back. They're my tip to surprise this season.
Looking forward then to the return of Leeds United. They have a massive task ahead of them, Bob Holmes. Away to Liverpool is Marcelo Bielsa's first task, head-to-head with Klopp. It's a Sunday, midnight kickoff. Let's look at Liverpool first. They've been quiet. We've mentioned that. They haven't signed anybody. They've signed cover for Robertson at left back. But apart from that, I guess we can report that Jordan Henderson is back in training.
Yeah, well, he'll be a big lift. They lacked him in the Community Shield. You could see that very clearly. Well, much has been made of Liverpool not signing anybody. They've been linked with Thiago Alcantara, and I still think they might get him. But they're being very prudent, and they're emphasizing the fact that they're not owned by oligarchs or sovereign wealth funds of Gulf nations or anything like that. They've got to cut the cloth to the measure. And yesterday's news about the danger of fans not being allowed back in for the foreseeable future, I think justifies their stance. There's a lot of clubs going to be shivering about what's going to happen, because they're basically banking on fans coming back into grounds to survive. And Liverpool have seen that possibility, and that's why they've been so prudent. But back to the pitch, they've got two guys who weren't featuring in the first 11 so much last season, but could be regarded almost like new signings. And these are midfielders, Naby Keita and Takumi Minamino.
Yeah, good pre-seasons, right?
Yes, Klopp's, I mean, they've been on the books. So Minamino was signed in January this year. Keita has been there for a couple of seasons now. We've waited a long time for him. But Klopp is very patient. He was patient with Andy Robertson, for example, and look how he turned out. The same thing could happen with these guys. Klopp is saying that they look completely different now. And I think he's talking about their physique as well as their confidence. They've managed to get a few minutes on the field. And we saw the difference that the goal made to Minamino just in a matter of minutes. I think you're going to see more of them. And if that's the case, this talk of Liverpool being pedestrian in midfield, lacking ideas, lacking dynamism, that will go out of the window. They've got two guys there who could, if they stay fit, make a massive difference. And I think that's what Klopp is banking on.
Okay.
He doesn't want to upset the team spirit by bringing in some guy from overseas with a big name. You know, it risks team spirit, it risks the wage structure and all that. And I'd still like to see them get him, by the way, Thiago. But I think he does have viable alternative options in those two players. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. I think with all that, I think Liverpool are just going to have too much for Leeds. Yeah. Because Leeds are essentially a championship club, although they have strength.
Well, it's a baptism of fire, Keish, for Bielsa. A couple of big name signings Leeds United made. Rodrigo Moreno has come in. He's going to play up front. Robin Koch has come from the Bundesliga. He's going to shore things up at the back. How do you think they'll fare? I mean, the tests don't come bigger than this one, right?
Yeah, I mean, match day one against Liverpool is always a difficult clash for any side at this point, right? I don't think anyone would want that on their books. What will be fascinating is this is a clash between two sides that press really high, and we've heard a lot about Marcelo Bielsa's high pressing style. They completely dominated possession against teams in the championship. They topped all kinds of statistics. You know, the most passes into the box, most shots, most chances created inside the box, and that's partly down to the fact that they press really highly. The thing about Bielsa is he's got a knack for preferring a set of players that are in the starting 11, and he tends to use them over and over again. And I know the championship is a long, hard season with 46 games, but the level of intensity in the Premier League is a bit higher than the championship. And you wonder if whether he'll alter that approach. The other fascinating bit is to just see how they play up front, because last year Patrick Bamford was heavily relied upon. I think he played in like 45 out of the 46 games for Leeds United, but he only scored like 16 goals. I mean, that's where Rodrigo Moreno has been brought in to alleviate a bit of that burden. The bigger, I would say the trickier situation for Bielsa now is trying to get Moreno back to the 2017-2018 version of Rodrigo Moreno, because that's the season when he scored 16 league goals for Valencia, and he was absolutely brilliant throughout the season under Marcelinho. And if they can get that version of Rodrigo Moreno back, then I think Leeds United could really have a goal scorer up on their sleeves. Make no mistakes, Leeds have enough in them, I think, to start really strongly. You put this Liverpool fixture out of the question, they can start really strongly in the Premier League. The bigger problem for Leeds United is because they have such a small squad, because their depth isn't exactly brilliant. How do you cope with the burnout?
Yeah,
that's Leeds' biggest problem. It came back to bite them a couple of seasons ago in the championship when they faded after New Year's. It almost felt like they were going to fade last season as well in the championship. And unless Bielsa has fixed that, and at the moment in terms of signings, there's still reports of them trying to bring in 2 or 3 more players. But if those names don't come in, that will be his biggest test, because the intensity in the Premier League, it's a complete different ball game.
Absolutely. Craig Marias, is there a Leeds player you'd have in your fantasy football team?
Oh.
I know, it's a tough one, right?
Yeah, it is a tough one.
That's a proper fantasy football question, that one.
I do currently have one, but I mean, it's just because of his price point more than anything.
Phillips.
And I think he's going to, no, it's not even, it's Ayling.
Okay, Luke Ayling.
And I think that's just more just to fill in a place. But I would be really interested in Rodrigo. I'm really keen to see how he gets on.
It's important Leeds don't get a walloping here at Anfield, right?
I actually don't think they will. I know, obviously, Liverpool, for Liverpool fans, they couldn't have asked for anything better, which is, a newly promoted side playing at home. But I just don't think it's going to be as straightforward as it was last season when they faced Norwich in the first game of the season. I think they won that one 4-1, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think Leeds will be pushovers. And not only this game, but for the rest of the season. What I like about Bielsa, he's very tactically, astute. And we give Klopp a lot of praise for the way that Liverpool play and, the style that they play. Bielsa and Leeds also have that. I think they'll frustrate Liverpool because they're so, well organized and well oiled. I think it won't be easy. I mean, I expect Liverpool to win, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's going to be a thrashing by any stretch of the imagination. I think Leeds will surprise a few people here, I think.
Really, game week 1 of the season, it's going to be Liverpool versus Leeds, the big one at Anfield, murder ball versus gegenpressing, Marcelo Bielsa versus Jurgen Klopp. What's going to happen? Well, for me, it's going to be a sneaky 1-1 draw. Leeds are going to surprise a lot of people this season. Patrick Bamford to get our first goal of the season. Don't forget to catch it.
Let's talk about Spurs against big spenders Everton. Taking a look at Spurs first, Bob Holmes. Have you been watching All or Nothing the documentary on Spurs?
No, I haven't, but I've heard about it. And I know who the star is.
Exactly. He really wants to stand out. Jose Mourinho has been frugal. Well, thanks to Daniel Levy, I'm sure, in the transfer window. Only Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and Matt Doherty have come in. Their signings, you feel that will bolster the talent and try and allow the talent like your sons to shine a bit more in the team. But good signings, you think?
Yeah, I think they're sensible signings. I mean, he had a good look at Spurs last season. I mean, he was there for 3/4 of the season, wasn't he? And he did take them up. You know, I mean, because they were outside the top 4, never looked like getting in it, we tend to dismiss them. But they did rise up from 10th, I think, when Pochettino left, to about 7th when they finished. So he did do okay, not great, but he was under great restraint, and he obviously had the virus to deal with like everybody else. Not a great time to come in when you have that to deal with. So Mourinho, yeah, this is his last big job, I think, before he moves to Hollywood. Yeah, I think he's still got it. He was kind of a little bit subdued by his standards last season, outside of the film anyway. Yeah. It's a bit hard to say. I think the jury is out on him. I mean, he was being written off after the United sort of debacle towards the end. People were saying he's lost it. He can't deal with young players anymore and all that, a bit of a grumpy old man. I think he's proved that he's still got something at Spurs. I mean, he's got some pretty decent players there. I mean, he's got Harry Kane and Son, after all. I mean, they're good enough. They're getting anybody's team, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
You know, he's got a decent keeper. Yeah, I think these signings, this type of signing, augurs quite well. It means they're not getting carried away.
Yeah.
They're being sensible about things, and he may just creep up into sort of challenging for 4th position, that sort of thing this season.
Okay.
I think that would satisfy Levy and Mourinho.
All right.
If he could do that.
Very quickly, we have to look at Everton. Massive load of signings here, Keish. Allen's coming from Napoli for 25 million. Abdullah Decore is joined from Watford for 20 million. James Rodriguez from Real Madrid, superstar, for 22 million. Good business, but Ancelotti now under pressure to deliver.
Yeah, definitely under pressure to deliver. I mean, I think Allen in particular is a terrific signing, especially if we can get the Allen the version of Allen who played under Ancelotti. He clocked the most amount of tackles in Serie A, and that's the kind of player that Everton have really been lacking ever since Idrissa Gana Gueye left. And having a Decore there as well, a Premier League proven player, he's a great addition. James Rodriguez is the one where there'll be a lot of question marks over. Because he has struggled in and out of teams over the last few years. But again, Ancelotti is a huge fan of him. He signed him at Real Madrid. He signed him at Bayern Munich as well. This is the 3rd time he's brought him, James Rodriguez, to a club. So he seems to be a fan of him, and hopefully that helps in bringing out the best in James Rodriguez. The bigger problem for Everton now is, and we spoke about this before as well, time is ticking. And I don't see a striker coming in through the doors. You look up front, Moise Kean this morning. There was a tweet from the popular Fabrizio Romano indicating that Juventus got in touch with Everton, saying that they wouldn't mind having Moise Kean back on loan, but Everton are a bit hesitant to do that. And it's fair, because as much as he hasn't exactly delivered, you look up front, who else is there besides Moise Kean? You've got Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison sometimes plays in that central striker role, but I don't think that's his best position either. So there'll be question marks in terms of who's going to be that number 9, and pressure will be on Ancelotti, like you said, Ross. You've got all these additions coming in. Pressure will be on him to deliver, but I don't see them pushing the top 6 boys unless a proper 20-goal striker per season comes in before the window closes?
Well, generally, I think Everton fans are over the moon, you know. Like, I've not actually seen any fan who's unhappy with the recent transfer dealings. If anything, I think they're more unhappy with the current lot that we have, like Sigurdsson, you know, Delph, Davis, Iwobi, kind of underperforming. So to bring in these three, we're beefing up our midfield. So generally, the fans are really happy. And there's news or rumors that, you know, we might be preparing a 40 million bid for Zaha, which is kind of like half the price from a year or two ago, but I don't know how far that is true. And,
okay, that's attacking the Everton's problem. We've always stated was replacing that Lukaku shape hole, that number 9. I mean, all these signings kind of just fritter around the number 9, if you know what I mean. They're like 10s, 11s,
that's
right?
But you know, the problem is we are dealing with all the poor recruitment from the previous years. So to be honest, the squad needs a massive overhaul, and it can't be done in one transfer window, really. So I think to sort out the frontline issue, I think Richarlison is key to our squad this year.
And Calvert-Lewin, I guess, because he was good last year, right?
Yeah, because if you look at our squad now, we are weak in practically every area. We have so much of deadwood to get rid of.
Yeah.
And if you look at our defense, who have we got? Keane, Mina, Holgate. Mina is basically a sick note. He's always injured.
He's a sick note, yes.
Yeah. And, you know, Holgate, I think he's taken a knock recently. So that only leaves Keane as a senior, you know, central defender. We've got Branthwaite, but, you know, he's a young kid and needs to pick up more experience.
So a centre-back should be the next.
Centre-back, yes.
Yeah.
And a left-back as well, because with Baines' retirement, got no cover for Dean.
Yeah.
On the right, I think right should be fine because we've still got Seamus and we've got Jonjo Kenny coming back from Schalke. So I think...
Bearing all that in mind, still a lot of work to do. There's culling that needs to be done, very important. Yeah. How do you see the season playing out for Everton and Ancelotti?
Oh, well, we are still very much a team in transition.
But will the likes of James hit the ground running? I mean, I need to know whether to buy James Rodriguez for fantasy football.
Oh, apparently, anyway. Apparently, we got him on a free transfer, and it wasn't for 12 million. So, if it is true, that's a fantastic coup, I would think.
That's a massive coup because he's a big name, and only an Ancelotti can attract James.
That's
Rodriguez,
right. I mean,
right?
No Ancelotti, no James, and no Allen as well.
Yeah, true,
so,
true.
Yeah.
Okay, so it starts against Spurs on Sunday. What's going to happen? You know Jose and his style of football. What do you think is going to happen with New Everton this season in this game?
Well, you know, our performance has been very poor, you know, away against Spurs. So, to be honest, I'd be happy to come away with a draw, really.
Yes, looking at West Brom versus Leicester. It's a Sunday 9 p.m. kickoff. Craig Marias, Grady Diagana has been made a permanent signing for West Brom. It's caused a lot of hoo-ha. West Ham fans aren't happy about that. £18 million. They haven't got much else going for them, looking at this West Brom side under Slaven Bilic. What do you reckon? Mateus Pereira, who was good for them last season, 8.5 million, 8.25 million. That's been made permanent as well. I bet you find very few fantasy football players there in West Brom, huh?
I mean, if I was to look at it, Diagana would be one. I think it's a good piece of business. West Brom have been quiet in the transfer window, but Diagana he's played with them before, and I can understand the fury of West Ham fans and players alike. I mean, we saw Mark Noble publicly come out on Twitter and express his disappointment and his anger at the club for allowing him to go. He had a really good preseason. He's a kid that's been talked about a lot in the West Ham academy. Fantastic winger, just past people for fun. And you know, everyone thought this would be a great year for him to come in and prove himself at West Ham since he's never been given the opportunity. It's a funny one from West Ham's point of view, but it can only benefit West Brom because Slaven Bilic needs these type of players. Now, Matthias Pereira, who you touched upon, he's about 6 million, I think, in FPL in pricing, which is a little bit too much for my team.
Yeah.
But if there's one player to look out for at West Brom this season, this is the guy. He was fantastic for them on loan last season. They made that deal permanent in the transfer window, and if he can replicate anywhere near that sort of form, in the Premier League, he's going to have a few clubs looking at him because he really is a good player. I worry for West Brom. I like Slaven Bilic. I liked him when he was at West Ham, when he had that fantastic season. When what's his name? The French winger, Payet. When Payet was there, they had a really good season, West Ham, and then it kind of fell apart in the second season when Payet decided to leave and kick up a storm. But I just feel that with this West Brom side, there's not enough there. Not enough there. I think they signed Callum Robinson as well,
that's right.
who's nowhere near a proven Premier League player. You got Charlie Austin that's there, who they're going to rely on, I feel, to get them the goals, which is not bad. But is it enough to stay in the Premier League? I don't think so. I think they're going to struggle. I think West Brom, for me, are the favourites to go down before we've even kicked off.
All right. Well, opponents Leicester City, Bob Holmes, have only brought in Timothy Castagna from Atalanta. He was is a left back, Belgian international. He's going to slot straight into the team, but they're reliant, Leicester City, on 33-year-old Jamie Vardy, showing no signs of slowing down. A Golden Boot winner last year. They need another good season from Senior Vardy.
Yeah, they certainly do. He surprised a lot of people with getting as many goals as he did, certainly winning the Golden Boot. We didn't expect that of a 33-year-old. All credit to him. But he did have one of his spells, one of his droughts, and he was a bit lucky to get out of it. So you always worry if he does go into another spell of 6 or 7 games without a goal, whether he'll ever score again. He's that type of player. But he gets scruffy goals, he gets great goals. So he is a force to be reckoned with. Whether he can keep this up, I think he's certainly got another season in him because he's still quick. He's still one of the fastest forwards in the Premier League at 33. So that is a big asset to have. Brendan Rodgers this season, bit of a test for him. Leicester have shown that they really are a selling club. When they go and sell one of their prime assets to a rival, or Chelsea, they seem to have a sales line there, don't they? They sold Kante to Chelsea a couple of years ago, and then they've gone and replaced him straight away with a cheaper option. And this is what they do, and it's been very successful. I mean, as a business, and not bad on the field either. They did actually win the title, and they came close last year. They came close to the top 4 anyway. Got into Europe. That's their business model. But whether it's going to be sustainable over the long haul, we've seen other clubs try to do this, but eventually they keep losing their best quality players. They replace them with inferior players, and that tells in the end, and they start slipping. So Brendan Rodgers got a bit of a difficult job to live up to the high-flying performances of last season. Yeah. So we'll probably see what he's made of this time.
Join our Liga TFIF Premier if you're an FPL manager. The code to join is right there for you on the screen. Here's Craig Marias with a chat about Fantasy Premier League.
During this whole lockdown period, I looked at it and, I thought, hey, why don't I start my own show? It's called FPL Expectations. All the pundits and experts are Asia-based. And what I noticed was that there's a real strong market in Asia, and a lot of active players, a lot of very good players as well. which kind of goes under the radar quite a bit.
Okay, well, let me just cut in and all that. I understand, but setting up fantasy football teams with a week away, I want you to tell us who out of the new signings we've mentioned is worth a punt. Out of all the new signings we've spoken about and all the signings that happened over the summer, who would you take a punt on in your fantasy?
Well, I think, considering with fixtures and everything, I think Timo Werner is a tasty-looking player at 9.5 million. You'd expect him to start. He looks sharp, scored for Chelsea already, scored for Germany as well last night. So he's a player that if you've got a little bit of money to spare up front, is someone that you really want to get into your team. I think Chelsea faced Brighton on the first day of the season as well. So that could be a very tasty fixture for them. And coming off them, I mean, you got your standard. I mean, Spurs, they started the season pretty good. Arsenal have a fantastic couple of fixtures before it gets a little bit tougher. What you have to remember is that Man United and Man City don't play the first game.
Exactly. So do you save the Fernandes money or what? Do you buy him and put him on the bench? I don't know.
Yeah, so we've seen a few drafts and a few of the experts that have drafted out one of their many drafts. And the consensus is that, stay away from United and City, or have at least one. So have Mason Greenwood at 7.5 million that can sit on your bench for that first game week. But then again, that depends a lot on the Sancho deal or Kingsley Coman or Douglas Costa, and whoever United decide to bring in on the right-hand side will impact that Mason Greenwood price. So, I mean, there's so much uncertainty is what I would say going into the season. And a lot of FPL experts are thinking, do I go with the try to test it, or do I take a gamble and go with the new blood that's coming to the Premier League? So it's really good, but do give us a follow and subscribe to our channel, FPL Expect Asians, on YouTube. And we deliver about 3 to 4 videos per week. We've got some really good players on there that give you expert advice. So it's smiles all round if you're looking to go well, make some money in your fantasy football teams this week.
Moneybags Chelsea are in action against Brighton at the weekend. On Tuesday morning. It's a 3:15 a.m. kickoff. Let's look at Chelsea first, and let me come to you, Craig Marias, on the mass amounts of signings that Chelsea have made. There's some proper fantasy football players there in that lot of names, isn't there?
There is, but the problem with this is, fantastic players and great FPL assets, but who's going to play? And the danger with getting these guys on on big money with your FPL budget, 9.5 with Timo Werner, 8.5 and Havertz, are they going to play week in, week out? And that is the conundrum that FPL managers are facing. Trying to kind of guess what Frank Lampard's team is going to be. We know Ziyech is out. We know Chilwell is out. Thiago Silva is short of training minutes. I think with the Chelsea squad. I think he's been on an extended break since PSG's Champions League final. So there's a lot of uncertainty around who actually starts for Frank Lampard and Chelsea. So I think Werner, as Keisha's mentioned on the show before, is a dead cert to start. He's already had a friendly with Chelsea. He's been playing for Germany and he's been in good form. So if you want security, I think, Timo Werner at 9.5 million is the one to go for.
Okay. Bob, with all these new signings, do you worry for Chelsea's homegrown players? Your Callum Hudson-Odois and your even your Billy Gilmores, do you see them getting much game time this season?
Carabao Cup, I think. They almost be wishing it started, Chelsea were involved in the early rounds. This is a problem. It's a massive problem because Lampard was rightly lauded for bringing these lads on last season. I mean, Chelsea had famously only produced one guy from the academy in the last 20 years, John Terry. Nobody since him who had established themselves in the first 11. Last year, they had 4 or 5 who did. But are we going to see them this year? And if we're not, it really means that last season was a waste of time. I mean, you bring these guys on, develop them, and they make it. We all know who we're talking about here: Tammy Abrahams, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Billy Gilmore towards the end of the season.
Mason Mount.
Mason Mount, England international.
Tamori.
So what happens to them? They won't be very happy. There's already rumours that they're not happy, understandably so. I mean, Havertz and Werner particularly, for the big fees that were paid for them, they'll be expecting to start. And for several games, even if they don't hit the ground running, they're not going to be dropped, having invested that much in them after 2 games or anything. So it's really hard to see where these young lads are going to fit in. As I say, Carabao Cup. I mean, it's a bit of a joke to say that, but they're not going to be content with that, because they know that they'd be starting at most other clubs every week. So how he's going to keep all this lot happy? And it's not just the youngsters. He's got quite a lot of experienced players who are not going to be happy.
Yeah.
And one he missed, and I think one he lost rather, and I think he's going to miss, is Willian. I mean, I thought he was one of their mainstays, has been for 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And because they didn't want to offer him a 3-year contract, he's gone to Arsenal. I think he's going to make them pay and regret that decision. So I mean, they got rid of him. They got rid of Pedro as well, who was less effective last season. But they've got an absolute surfeit of players, and just what they're going to do with them all, I don't know. I see it as a huge problem. I mean, they won't mind if they start off and they're top of the league, the fans won't be complaining. But I think deep down there is a worry there for Frank Lampard, and it's going to be tricky to sort out.
Just touching on that, I mean, we talk a lot about the money that he spent, Frank Lampard, but let's not forget, he didn't really spend anything last season. So I mean, you're talking about a £300 million outlay, over 2 seasons, which isn't too much. And I think the concern here is it Frank Lampard that's been making these signings, or is it the higher management? Because we all know how Frank Lampard, when he came into the job, how he got the job, why he got the job. Wasn't a proven manager by any stretch of the imagination, but he knew these young players coming through. That was the reason they gave him the job. Jody Morris, alongside him, has coached a lot of these products of the academy that came through to the first team. Now, fast forward 12 months, and the question has to be asked: is Frank Lampard having any say in these, or is it Chelsea thinking that
Romans, yeah.
Well, I mean, we got. I think Peter Cech's the sporting director there now, isn't he? As well. So are these signings coming from above? And Lampard's just saying, okay, look, I mean, I'm not going to say no to world-class players, but I really wonder how much of a say he's getting in. And the spending isn't done yet. They're still going to go out. They're going to sign a goalkeeper. If you read the reports, it's interesting times for Chelsea, but it does beg the question: who's actually making these decisions?
Yeah, interesting season ahead for Frank Lampard and Chelsea. All right, their opponents on Tuesday, Keish. Brighton, last season under Graham Potter, well, they were impressive-ish. He had a massive task. He was told to make the playing style more expansive. Do you feel he's done that at Brighton?
No, I definitely think he's made it more, it's more continental, it's more versatile in that sense. And one of the things that about Graham Potter that's admirable is he's a huge proponent of data analytics. So him coming into Brighton isn't just him bringing his managerial style and experience. It's him bringing a whole different approach to the club, even in the way they sign players, even in the way they manage players from an analytics standpoint. And in that sense, I think Graham Potter has done really well. And I think most people now, a lot of whom were unhappy about Chris Hughton's sacking a year ago, would look at it and be like, okay, to be fair, he's done pretty well, Graham Potter. But obviously, the reason he was brought in the first place is to elevate Brighton's status as a Premier League club, and that pressure will continue to grow season by season, and that pressure will grow this season as well. The bigger problem for them is how do you manage their expectations and how do you cope? Because every side in the Premier League is extremely competitive in that sense. You point out, Ross, that Brighton have got a pretty decent cup entry in the Carabao Cup. There's a chance they won't face a Premier League side till round 4, so that could be an avenue. But knowing Graham Potter, he will definitely want to see his side do well in the Premier League as well. And I mean, they fought really hard to keep Ben White away from Leeds United to make sure that he's a part of that. And they've got Joel Veltman. Just how they went about the process of signing Joel Veltman. There was a really interesting article that came out a couple of days after they signed Joel Veltman about how Potter and the Brighton team have been tracking him for like a year, or even before Potter came in as well. The team had been tracking him already, and they made constant contacts. They spoke to him really often. So he's a player that they've really wanted. And make no mistakes, he started alongside Virgil van Dijk in the Nations League the other day. So that's the kind of player that Brighton are getting. Joel Veltman at the back. You've got Ben White there as well. So it's a pretty sturdy back three partnership that Graham Potter will have, and the key is just trying to improve from where they were last year.
Yep. Okay. Does anyone think that Brighton can upset Chelsea on Tuesday?
I think they can frustrate them. They actually face each other, a couple of weeks back in a friendly, and I know it's a friendly. And
Timo Werner scored with his first touch, didn't he?
I don't know if it was his first touch, but he did score.
I think it was his first touch.
But I think just going on what Hugh said, I think there is a reason to believe that Brighton can get something from this. With Chelsea, it's all these players coming together. Have they gelled yet? They haven't had many minutes together. And I know you're going to say that good players can always produce and this, that, the other, but. I just have a feeling it's not similarly to Leeds. When they face Liverpool, I don't think it's going to be a thrashing or a very straightforward win. I think a lot of the players that are coming back from Chelsea haven't had enough minutes. In the Premier League, haven't had enough minutes in general. So I think that could be a bit of a problem. But I do feel that Brighton can get something from this.
And there we have it. Here are your fixtures then for the weekend. Really hope that your team does very well. Thanks a lot for watching. Do give our channel a subscribe on YouTube. See ya.